The war had begun. He had lost much already, but this was only the beginning. He knew what came next. There would be no peace, no turning back, only vengeance tempered by grief. His path was clear, written now in the ashes of his fallen comrades. Madinga straightened slowly, gripping the god spear tightly. Around him, Midis and Chakara stood silently, gazing upon him with newfound reverence. They understood clearly now. Their only chance for survival rested with the young god before them. The funeral rites would come later. Mourning would wait. Right now, the rebellion depended on Madinga's strength. For the first time, Madinga truly understood his power and its terrible cost. He was ready now, not just to fight, but to wage a war unlike any before. And as the dust settled, the surviving rebels gathered behind him, ready to follow him into a future shrouded in uncertainty, defined by loss, but illuminated by a single, unbreakable truth. Madinga, the god born of tragedy and betrayal, would become the rebellion's heart and the elder god's greatest fear. As the final echoes of divine power faded, Madinga's strength deserted him completely. His knees buckled, body collapsing heavily onto the ravaged battlefield, consciousness slipping away into merciful darkness. The spear fell from his trembling grip, its metallic clang echoing solemnly in the now silent night. Midis and Chakara rushed to his side, their faces pale with exhaustion and concern. Kneeling beside him, Midis carefully checked Madinga's pulse, sighing deeply with relief upon finding the slow, steady rhythm beneath his fingertips. Though unconscious, Madinga had survived. Yet, at what terrible cost? Hours passed in mournful silence. Dawn rose pale and hesitant over a battlefield littered with devastation and the fallen bodies of beloved comrades. Midis stood silently, his body battered, heart heavy with grief as he surveyed the carnage. Chakara remained close, her usually stoic face now etched deeply with sorrow, her eyes damp with unshed tears. Both knew the harsh truth. They had survived, but victory felt hollow, stained irreparably by loss. Madinga awoke slowly as daylight filtered softly through the smoke and haze lingering above the battlefield. His body ached terribly, wounds burning, limbs heavy with exhaustion. But none of that pain compared to the grief that settled like stone upon his heart. He rose unsteadily, eyes haunted, searching for the faces of his companions, finding only Midis and Chakara standing solemnly nearby, their expressions grave. Midis turned toward him slowly, speaking gently, yet firmly. "You're awake. Thank the source for that. We've lost much, Madinga. Too much. It's time we honored our fallen." His voice broke slightly on those final words, betraying the anguish he carried beneath his stoicism. Madinga nodded silently, his throat tight, his eyes distant and hollow. He said nothing, for there were no words adequate enough to express the depth of his sorrow. They gathered their fallen brothers and sisters slowly and with reverence, each lifeless form carefully laid side by side upon hastily built funeral pyres. Midis and Chakara moved methodically, their movements precise but laden with sorrow, treating each fallen warrior as if they were still alive, deserving every bit of honor and dignity. Madinga, still weak and battered, insisted on helping, ignoring his pain, determined to give proper respect to those who had fallen defending him and the rebellion's cause. As the sun reached its zenith, Midis stood before the assembled pyres, his voice clear but trembling slightly as he began to speak. These warriors gave their lives in a fight against tyranny, against oppression, and against gods who believed themselves beyond consequence, he declared firmly, eyes blazing fiercely through tears he stubbornly refused to let fall. They were more than warriors. They were our family, our companions, and our greatest source of strength. Their sacrifices will never be forgotten. He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing solemnly, his voice softer now, tinged with regret and pride. Ekundayo, Nyoka, Zuberi, and Iru. They fought bravely until their final breaths. Their courage, their honor, and their lives will inspire us forever. We carry their memories with us, and we will honor their sacrifices by finishing what they started, by never surrendering, no matter the cost. Chakra stepped forward quietly, lighting the torches that would ignite the pyres, her hand steady despite the heavy weight upon her heart. As the flames slowly took hold, rising fiercely into the sky, she whispered quietly into the wind, a silent vow carried gently away with smoke and ashes. Madinga stood motionless, his eyes reflecting the dancing flames, every flicker and spark a painful reminder of those he had lost, of friends he would never see again, of a mentor whose final words had forever altered his understanding of his past. As the fire roared higher, Madinga felt an unbearable grief that threatened to consume him completely. His heart felt empty, broken beyond repair. Yet beneath that pain was something new, a resolute, ironclad purpose. He would never forget these fallen warriors, nor the sacrifice Iru had made to save him. The revelation that Mbutumba, an elder god, was his true father, now burned bitterly within him, mingling with the grief into an unyielding resolve. He knew exactly what he had to do. Long after the fires had burned low, leaving only smoldering embers and ash, the remaining rebels gathered silently around Madinga, eyes expectant yet uncertain. Midis and Chakara stood firmly at his sides, their loyalty unwavering despite the brutal losses they'd endured. Finally, Madinga spoke, his voice low yet unwavering, filled with a quiet intensity that resonated through the silent night. We've lost much today. Too many friends, too many brothers and sisters, but their deaths won't be in vain. From this moment onward, we are no longer just rebels. We are the storm that will shake the heavens, the vengeance long overdue. Today, we swear on the ashes of our fallen that we will see the elder gods answer for their crimes. Midis nodded solemnly, his eyes fiercely proud, while Chakara stepped closer, her hand gripping Madinga's shoulder firmly, silently offering support and unity. Around them, the few remaining rebels raised their fists in silent solidarity, their faces hardened by loss, but illuminated by a newfound determination. Madinga lifted his head toward the heavens, the last embers flickering in the darkness, casting faint illumination upon his face. He no longer felt like a child caught in the currents of fate. He was a leader forged from tragedy, hardened by pain, and driven by vengeance. No longer would he remain a victim of destiny's whims. He would shape destiny itself. The elder gods had unleashed their greatest weapon, expecting to crush the rebellion utterly. But they had miscalculated gravely. In trying to destroy Madinga, they had awakened something far more dangerous, a god unchained whose rage would reshape the very cosmos. He turned silently, walking away from the smoldering ashes. Midis and Chakara following resolutely, each step carrying the promise of revenge, justice, and freedom. Behind them, the wind carried away the ashes of their fallen comrades, dispersing their memory across Alkebulan itself, planting the seeds of defiance and hope that would soon bloom into revolution. This battle had ended, but the war had only just begun, and this war, Madinga knew, would change everything. Far away, hidden in the shadows of the forgotten planet, the Trickster watched silently, observing Obanor's relentless training. He was patient, but even patience had limits, and time was slipping quickly from his grasp. Obanor was powerful, yes. His combat prowess was unmatched among the Ngulumbo warriors, but that strength remained locked behind a barrier of restraint. Obanor fought well, flawlessly, yet he had not unleashed the legendary power sleeping within his veins. the raw divinity inherited from Madinga. The trickster knew the boy needed something drastic, a catalyst powerful enough to rip away his emotional chains, something that would unlock his true potential in one decisive moment. He had prepared for this moment meticulously, weaving an illusion so vivid, so real, that it would tear the very foundations of Obanor's sanity and unleash the hidden storm within. With a whisper of ancient incantations, the trickster extended his hands, casting shadows that danced and twisted until they formed a dark vision from the past, a cruel tapestry of illusion, yet vivid enough to be indistinguishable from reality itself. Obanor stopped mid-strike, his sword trembling as the battlefield around him suddenly faded into darkness. Confusion gripped him, his heart quickened with unease. Slowly, shapes emerged from the shadows, familiar faces. He has only seen portraits of them, but he knew they were his parent. Their eyes gentle, their smiles radiant, so real it ached. Obanor reached out instinctively, heart swelling painfully in his chest. But the illusion offered no warmth, no comfort, only torment. Before he could touch them, the peaceful scene shattered violently. Darkness surged again, now depicting a cruel and brutal scene, vivid and horrific. Elder gods descending with merciless force, his parents overwhelmed, screaming for mercy. He watched, helplessly frozen, as their lives were ripped away, their divine essence stolen, their bodies crumbling into ash beneath the ruthless gaze of those he had grown to despise. His heart shattered all over again, memories and wounds that had never fully healed now ripped open with savage precision. "No!" Obanor's scream tore through the silence, raw and ragged with anguish and despair. His fists clenched, tears of rage and sorrow cascading freely down his face. His entire body shook violently as emotions, long buried and fiercely guarded, surged to the surface, threatening to consume him whole. Within his soul, something snapped. A barrier cracked apart violently, unlocking a torrent of energy he never knew he possessed. Pain surged through his veins like fire, agony blending seamlessly with rage, grief, and vengeance. He fell to his knees, clutching his head, screaming as raw divine power erupted from within. His muscles rippled, expanding and contracting as his aura flared brightly, lighting up the darkness surrounding him in a storm of celestial fury. The ground beneath him trembled, cracks spiderwebbing outward from his kneeling form. Obanor's eyes glowed fiercely, burning with a divine fire, a radiant gold tinged with sparks of deep violet and midnight black. His power surged uncontrollably, waves of energy pulsating outward, shattering the illusion, revealing the trickster's shocked face as reality flooded back. The trickster stumbled back, genuinely startled for the first time in centuries. This display of raw, chaotic divinity was far beyond anything he had expected. He watched Obanor with a mixture of fascination and fear, sensing clearly that he had not merely awakened power, but perhaps something uncontrollable, something infinitely more dangerous than he'd anticipated. The trickster had sought to unleash a storm, yet the hurricane before him threatened even the master manipulator himself. Obanor rose slowly, his body shaking, his breathing ragged and deep. His vision cleared gradually, eyes locking fiercely onto the trickster. "Why? Why would you show me this?" His voice trembled with barely restrained fury, every word dripping with accusation and pain. The trickster steadied himself, regaining composure quickly, a cunning smile forming on his lips despite the lingering unease. "Because, my dear Obanor, you needed to understand your pain to embrace your power. Your parents' murder, their unjust deaths, that was the catalyst. Your vengeance, your hatred. Because your rage, Obanor, your sorrow, your pain, they are not weaknesses. They are your greatest sources of strength," the trickster said slowly, carefully, his voice smooth yet commanding. His eyes locked onto Obanor's, their golden glow radiating both pride and caution. He stepped forward deliberately, ignoring the destructive waves of divine power still cascading wildly from Obanor's trembling form. Only by facing this truth can you truly harness the power within you. Only through this agony can you unlock the true potential that lies dormant in your veins. Obanor stared at his shaking hands, feeling the surge of raw divine energy crackling fiercely around him, consuming him in a blinding storm of chaos. The illusion of his parents' deaths played again and again in his mind, tormenting him. But through the pain, he realized something powerful. This agony, this relentless hurt, it was his to control, and if he mastered it, no force could ever hold him back again. His eyes suddenly cleared, shining brighter with newfound resolve. He rose slowly to his feet, his breathing steady now, his presence commanding and unyielding. The ground beneath him continued trembling gently with the echoes of his awakened power. He felt changed, evolved, no longer shackled by the restraints he had unknowingly placed upon himself. He lifted his gaze, piercing through the darkness, meeting the trickster's eyes once more. "You succeeded in awakening my power," Obanor said, voice cold, measured, and terrifyingly calm. "But know this, I will not be your puppet. This power, this legacy, belongs to me, and I will wield it as I choose." The trickster paused for a brief moment, taken aback by the intensity in Obanor's gaze. He had succeeded, yes, but something else had awakened alongside that divine force, a defiance, a will strong enough to resist even him. For an instant, he questioned whether he had underestimated Obanor, if perhaps he had unleashed something he could not control. Yet he concealed his unease behind a mask of satisfaction, a cunning smile curving his lips. "Excellent," the trickster replied, his tone measured, betraying nothing of the caution within. "You have taken your first step toward true mastery, but this is only the beginning. To claim the future you seek, to rewrite fate itself, you must now prove yourself capable of wielding this newfound strength." Obanor rose fully to his feet, aura still pulsating dangerously around him, his gaze unwavering. "I am ready," he stated firmly. "But from now on, we do things my way. You will never manipulate me again." The trickster's smile widened. He stepped closer, not intimidated by Obanor's display of force. Instead, his voice took on an almost seductive tone, promising power, influence, and revenge. "Fair enough, Obanor. I offer you guidance, resources, and armies to command. Use them wisely, and Alkebulan itself will bend before your might." Obanor remained silent for a long moment, his thoughts turbulent. He finally nodded, his mind rapidly sorting through possibilities. The trickster's methods were ruthless, yes, but he had also given Obanor something priceless: freedom. For the first time, Obanor felt in control, his destiny finally in his own hands. "I will unleash the fullness of my legacy," Obanor said slowly, determination burning brightly in his voice. "But know this, my loyalty to you will depend entirely on how honest you are with me from now on. Cross me, betray me again, and no power in existence will protect you from my wrath." The trickster inclined his head slightly, appearing amused by Obanor's threat. But within his mind, a flicker of uncertainty grew. He had created a weapon more powerful than anticipated, one that might turn against him if he was careless. "Agreed," he said calmly. "Your destiny is yours now. Forge it wisely, Obanor." Obanor turned away, power radiating from him in waves that rattled the forgotten planet itself, each step heavy with newfound purpose. His training was now complete, his limitations shattered. The boy he had once been was dead, replaced by a warrior who stood on the precipice of true godhood. As Obanor vanished into the darkness, the trickster watched carefully, the smile fading from his face. For the first time in centuries, he felt uncertain, wary of what he had unleashed. He had succeeded, yes. Obanor's power was beyond his wildest expectations, but he had also awakened something he had not planned for, a will stronger than his manipulation. He realized then, with bitter clarity, that the war he had so carefully orchestrated had entered a dangerous new phase, a battle between gods and mortals, creation and destruction, rebellion and order. And now, at the center of it all stood Obanor, his greatest weapon and potentially his greatest threat. For better or worse, the game had changed, and the trickster knew he had to tread carefully. His grand scheme now rested upon the shoulders of a being whose power he could barely control, a weapon that could turn against him as easily as it could destroy his enemies. But there was no turning back now. The war was about to begin in earnest. The stage was set, and Obanor had emerged as a new force, a god reborn, forged from pain and defiance, standing at the very center of destiny itself.